Hi everyone, I'm Joni Young, and today I'm going to show you step by step how to paint this pretty garden scene. This is from one of my recent trips visiting Victoria, Canada, Bouchard Gardens, and this is the Japanese garden, a very tranquil, beautiful place, and I wanted to share it with you all. Today I'm working on a 10 by 10 double primed and stretched canvas. I have the following colors: Dioxazine purple, light blue violet, neon rose, red, and pink. These three are by Holbein. The rest of the colors I'm using today are all heavy bodied by Liquitex Basics Acrylics. And on with the colors here, I've got light olive green, sap green, and titanium white. What I'm going to do is start working on the background first. Now at first glance, when I'm looking at the photo, the reference photo, by the way, I'll have a free download of that available on Patreon. At first glance, it looks like it's just white, but when you really study a photo and you look closely at it, you start to see more than you did when you first looked at it. So I'm seeing a very light pale blue, also reflected in the water, of course. So I'm going to start off with just blocking in the background. Then I'll come in and start building towards the foreground in layers. So that's the easiest way and best way I found to approach working on landscapes. Then you really get that natural perspective happening rather than going back and trying to add a tree at the very end that's in the background. It can be done, but it makes it a little bit more difficult, and it looks the most natural this way. So if you guys are ready, don't forget to hit that subscribe if you haven't already, and let's begin. I've got a flat brush here just for my small 10 by 10 canvas. You can do this on any size canvas you like. Keep in mind the proportions will change slightly depending on the size and shape of canvas you're using. I've got some water on my brush, and I'm just gonna show you guys another quick and easy way to blend your acrylics. Have a little spray bottle. I just got this from the dollar store. Set it on the finest mist. Hold the spray bottle about a foot away from the canvas and just spray lightly. Just moisten your canvas a little bit. You don't want any drips. If you have any drips, just dab them off with a little towel. What this is going to do is going to make the canvas slippery so that you're able to blend and pull your acrylic around so much easier. But if you have too much water, the opposite will happen, so be very mindful of that. Okay, so it's a little bit wet now, and I'm going to start coming in with some blue violet and some white, both colors on my brush at the same time. And I'm just going to start pulling that in here. Easy with that wet canvas. This is how you get your acrylics to act like oils without having to wait for them to dry like oils do. Gives you a little bit more control and time, but you can also come in and build up your layers without having to wait days for layers to dry with oils. Because it depends what method you're using when you're painting with oils, but this is what I found works best for me. Okay, so I'm adding it in the water as well, so you get just that light little hint of blue in there. Now remember, everything farther away will appear softer in tone, a little bit blurrier than the rest. When rendering a photo, it's best to even play on that more than what you see in the photo. Sometimes there's a lot more detail, even in your backgrounds, but it's best to choose one thing to be your focal point and apply all your details to. This is going to make your paintings amazing, okay? So it's also a lot easier to do that than lose yourself in creating everything to look real and super detailed. It's nice to just choose one thing as a focal point. And for this painting, it's the reflection of the bridge and the tree on the side. So all three of those things, the water reflections, the bridge, and the beautiful blossoming tree. So what I'm going to do now is go over to a Filbert brush, and I'm just going to get it a little bit wet, and I'm going to start working on the background trees. So I'm going to take a little bit of purple. I'll just bring it over here, pull in a little bit of that sap green, and just start here on the side. I'm going to start kind of blocking in, pulling across, up and down, just the shape of the way the trees and the bushes are back here. Then we've got area over here where the trees are taller. And then there's some spaces between, so I'm just going to tap, tap, tap. If you guys have never been to Bouchard Gardens in Victoria in Canada, it's really, really famous, and you just can't do it justice by taking photos or even a painting. You have to be there to experience it. It is such an experience. It's a healing place. It's absolutely beautiful. It's like just a world of gardens. It takes you through countries. There's Italian garden, there's rose garden from roses all over the world, there's Japanese garden, it just goes on and on and on. Okay, so now that I've got the basic shape of how the trees are, I'm gonna add a little bit more right here. We've got a tree that comes up here. So I'm just going to pull with the tip of my brush, again, just using sap green, a little bit of purple. I'm just pushing and wiggling to get the end of my Filbert brush nice and flat. That way we can get a thin tree trunk here. And then I'm just going to start tapping how I go. See how I go kind of up on the sides. It depends what kind of tree you're painting. And then it gets a little bit fuller down here, but up here they kind of go curved in the center and a little scoop, but it is farther away, so you don't have to worry about too many details. I'm just going to fill this in. I'm going to add a little bit more green, sap green, tap that in. Now we've got a darker tree, so I'm going to add more purple to make it really, really dark right in here. And then the rest of the paint in my brush, I'm going to work out here and just tap, tap, tap. Push and tap. And I'm going to switch over to my little round brush here and add a few little extra branches that I can't do with a Filbert brush because it's a bit too large. So I'm going to just go in here, pull up a little bit, add some little baby branches for the top of the tree. Just a little something like that. I'm going to do the same thing over here. And then we've got some very thin, wispy looking ones in the distance, even farther back. And then a little bit of that light olive green with my sap green. I'm just going to push and tap in here. Remember, we're wanting these to be somewhat out of focus compared to what's going to be going on in the foreground. Now I'm going to add some purple to my sap green and add a few lines or tree trunks. And then a few wiggly branches. I'll come back in with a little scoop of each sap green, light olive green. And we'll dab a little bit in front of the tree trunk so it makes sense. There's branches in the front covering up the part of the tree trunk and leaving a little bit of it exposed in between. And then we've got a little bit of white. We've got a big magnolia. Well, there's magnolia trees in bloom right now everywhere in the garden, and cherry blossom trees. So from far away, you might just see all these little dabs of white. So I don't want to forget about that. And I want to add a little bit in front of this tree too. Now I'm going to take my mop brush and I'm going to come in on an angle and tap in with my light olive green. I'm going to go slightly over top and partially down. It's going to go in front, so that gives us the layer. So now it sets that tree further back. We're going to add a little highlight. Just take a little dab of white, tap lightly into your light olive green, and I always like to show you the end of the brush so you see how much paint I'm adding. That gives you an idea of how much you need. And you want to tap to load your brush to keep that shape. That's going to give you that poofy textured shape for your bushes, trees, and foliage. Okay, so we're just going to apply this on the top part right there. I'm going to add just a little bit back here. Have a little bit further down here. It's going to show between the railing and posts on our bridge. And then before I wash this brush out, I'm going to go and tap into some purple and green. A little bit more green in there. Okay, and then I'm going to add a little bit of this, working my way up gently, and then stop when we get to the highlighted part. Okay, what I'm going to do is drop this down, pull, sweep. I'm going to take a little bit of water now that I know I'm done with this brush for bushes, so I can flatten it with some water. Pick up a little bit more with the water in here and the sap green and the purple. I can pull down easily and then go across for the reflections, shadows, ripples in the water. I'm going to flatten it again. And a Filbert brush works for this as well, but I've got this and I've got the paint on it, so I may as well just use it. You're just going to slide back and forth, leaving these little lines. Pick up some more purple. Some of these areas in the water are really dark, so I'm going to go over them. And adding a little bit of water to your paint will thin out the opaqueness, right? So that's going to look, it can tend to look more transparent or translucent. So you may need to go back over with some more paint when that happens. Reloading my brush. I've got the edge of the water, just the water's edge right here. I'm gonna add a little bit more in here with this brush, and then we're gonna switch over. Add a little bit of blue quickly. Make sure you're remembering to wash your brushes out in between use. Back over to my Filbert brush, and we're going to create some ripples here in the water. I'm going to take some white along with a little bit of blue. See, I've got on the tip of my brush like this, a little ridge of paint. We're going to create some little loops like this. I'm going to come in between these and make them look more rounded. So sometimes we're just going to have little skinny lines, and then some areas are very ripply and almost ruffly looking. Take some more white and blue. I just rinsed my brush out because I had a little bit of purple and green that I was picking up. And I want this area to just be the brightest before we come in with our bridge and reflection. So right here, I'm going to start adding little lines. Both with the purple, green, and the blue. Wash out my brush again. See all the green that we have up there? I want to add a little bit of that reflecting in the water. So all you have to do is just take those colors, pull them down, add a few little lines. And a little bit in here as well. Don't think about the finished product. Don't judge your painting at this point. We're working on the ugly stage at this point. That's what they call it. You gotta just keep reminding yourself, this is just midway. It always looks a little abstract and wrong partway through the painting. So you just keep going and you trust that that's the stage you're meant to be at right now. And it's going smoothly. You just keep going no matter what. I used to throw away half finished paintings all the time until one day I got tired of doing that, and I was out of frustration. I just kept going, and by the time I finished, it turned out really well, and I realized, okay, that's part of the process. I'm self-taught and I didn't take any lessons, so I had to learn that the hard way. I went through a lot of canvas. Okay guys, we're going to keep going down here, and we're going to start to pull and scoop towards the light blue. Wiggle and scoop out that way. Pick up some purple. All these little, and you'll see with the reference photo, I think I mentioned before, it's available on Patreon. You can download that for free. You'll see all the beautiful little squiggly lines and ripples in the water there. I'm going to add another layer of purple here. I'll take some green with it. Sometimes it can be easier for you if you turn your brush upside down like this, so handle pointing up and going up bottom to top or from top to bottom. So it's really finding what works for you. I change it up. Sometimes a little from the left to the right, and then other times quick little wiggle like that with the brush pointing up. I always like to mention all these little brush changes and directions and stuff because it's such an important part. I'm going to switch over to my liner brush now. You want to make sure that you have a lot of water. So you're easily able to create some brush strokes with little pressure. So I'm just gonna add a few little fine squiggly lines here. Then turning my brush with the handle pointing to the top. Reload just the tip. They're very wiggly and wobbly looking lines in the water, so please don't be afraid to try this. If you're a little shaky, it's still going to look really pretty. We take a little bit more paint and push a little bit harder in here. Rinse my brush out. I'm going to go back over to my white, a little bit of blue. And add a few little wiggles and squiggles the same way, just with some white and blue. Now I'm adding a little bit more white here just because there's already blue there, so I just want to brighten it up a little bit. I'm gonna get a little bit more water on my brush to help this paint flow better. Twist and roll, making sure you get that paint on the tip of your brush. Back and forth, side to side. Just creating a few little lines. I'm gonna add a few little branches there with some really watered down paint. Very thin amount of paint in my brush. Just can barely touch the canvas, just a few little branches. Wiggle, wiggle, pull and flick. Now because I have a lot of water in my brush, I want to make sure that it doesn't disappear once it dries, because that can happen. So I think I'll just go over and add a few more with a little bit extra paint in my brush. I'm going to add just a little hint of pink, peachy pink back here, because I can see it in the photo that we've got some magnolias past this white cherry blossom tree. So I'll just take a little bit of my neon red, just tint it. I'll tint my white with it a little bit. See how soft and pretty that is? And I'm just going to push and tap in here. I think I might be able to get away with just a little bit more saturation. So I'll pick up a little bit more into that. See how delicate that is? There's a little hint of it in here as well. The neon red with the white makes a very pretty shade of pink. It's a warmer pink. And we've got a cool pink here, a blue pink. I'm going to add a little bit of light olive green, and I'm going to just push and tap next to some of these. I'll take a little bit of white. You don't want to have a ton of paint on your brush, so just mix it up and then pull some of it off. I just want to add a little bit of greenery on some of these branches. And I'm going to go into my purple. There's a little bit of green in there too, so I'm just going to take that. And we've got a line right here at the edge of the water. I want to bring that back. And I'm just going to pull diagonally, okay? So just on an angle, just below the halfway mark. You can go right halfway down the middle of your canvas if you want. I always say don't cut your landscapes in half. It looks better if you have more sky or more foreground. That goes for your horizons as well. I'm going to make sure this is really dark, so I'm going to add another layer, no water, just paint only. I like to use heavy body paints, and by the way, when you use heavy body paints and you squeeze them out into a little lump like this, a little pile, they stay wet way longer than those thin watered down craft paints, because those, they don't stay in a pile, right? They're thin, so they go flat, and then more air can get to them and dry them out. Does that make sense? I just learned that when I used to use those craft paints many years ago. I enjoyed using them. The colors are pretty and it makes it easy to blend, but I find the colors are even better with heavy body. The quality is better and they do stay wet longer. Okay, so I just dried this off. Now I can come in with my round brush, some sap green, olive green, and a little bit of white. I don't want to over mix them. I just want to have a little bit of each on my brush. And that way I can just start tapping in little vines and leaves hanging over the water's edge here and on either side of our bridge. And then I'll just pull a little reflection down in the water. I'm going to take a little bit more of my purple and green. Sprinkle that in the side here. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is take some white, light olive green, a little bit of neon red, and I can make this a little bit darker by adding some purple. Now I've got more of an earthy, sort of a tan, clayish color, and there's a little walkway right here leading up to our bridge. It's not going to be really that visible. I just want to have a little area right there. Take a little bit more white. I'm going to be using a smaller Filbert brush. Use whatever you feel comfortable with. I recommend this. You'll have the most control with it, and because it's got round arches in it, it's easier to use something that already has that shape, so you're not fighting the brush and you're not working harder than you have to. So what I'm going to do is get my brush a little bit wet, and I'm going to take purple, green, a little bit of that light olive green, and we're going to start from here just do a little arch right there. Reload my brush. Define it a little bit more. Okay, and then we're going to go up a little bit higher. That's a smaller one, and then it gets higher. And then because of the tree over here, we're not really going to see anymore. The tree's going to be in front of it. We're going to have a line, a little slanted like this. Right in the middle where they meet, they come down in that V. Bring that down into the water. The other side of the bridge. So we're working on this part on the other side. So we're going to bring that down, and it's going to be just a little bit above this. This one comes down lower because of the way it's situated, the angle that we see it. I'm going to add more purple. There's a little like cement block, cement or wood, I'm not really sure. And then a line that comes on an angle like that. Add some more purple right there. More purple there, just under, because there's going to be some lighter and darker areas. Bring that diagonal line, so one straight down, diagonal, and then our block. I'm going to take some green with my purple. Going to go over those. Going to pull down for a reflection. So we have that diagonal up above, we have it going the opposite direction for our reflection in the water. Now I know this seems scary. I know you guys are really afraid to do this, but just follow along. Go against those thoughts you're having that tell you this is too scary. I don't know what's what. I can't do this. Ignore all that and just listen to me and follow one line at a time. So right below here, we've got that line, the water's edge, right? We're going to start to add the bridge reflection. We're going to pull, bring it in, and then over, wider here. See, it's coming together. Trust me, guys, you can do this. The only way you can't do it, the only way you fail, is if you don't try. I always say I'm here cheering you on. Let me guide you guys. Trust me, I know you can do this. We're going to pull a few little lines out here. Pull it back this way in, and then slide back. Again, just for some more reflections. A little ripple like that. We've got some posts that we're going to add above, but because we're working on the shadows and reflections in the water right now, we can just keep going with this color. So we're going to pull down here. Here, a little shorter one here, and another one that's a little longer right there. I'm getting my brush a little bit wet. The paint's starting to dry and get stuck in my brush, so a little bit of water, mixing the paint up again on my brush will really help release it. We're going to go ahead, pull, posts that are going to be above here, reflecting in the water, and then a little reflection down below as well of the railing. So the next thing that we're going to do is add a lighter tone to the bottom of the bridge, and I'm going to take that red again, some light olive green, mix it up and get that beautiful clayish color. Now a little bit of white in there will help brighten that up. And I'm just going to place my pinky here, start at the base, pull up and over. You want to leave a layer of dark, that's the shadow happening underneath this area of the bridge. Okay, we're going to add a little square right there. Mix up some more paint, work it out of your brush, and then get it on the tip. Same thing, up and over. I'm going to take some white, make this 2 to 3 shades brighter, and I'm going to go and bring it over here. So it's wider here, and then it gets thinner as it goes down. We'll have a little bit visible through our trees, our tree that's going to be over here. I'm going to add just a little bit more of that light color down here towards the bottom. hold up right there. Add a little bit on the end. On the end there, but mostly everything else will be in shadow, okay? And then we've got that one coming out diagonally. We've got our little block in the water. So just a little bit like that. And take a little more purple, bring that up a little higher. And then we still have that nice shadow under the bridge and all along the edge of the water there. I'm going to add a little purple line right there, there, and going straight up. Now I'm going to start to slowly gradiate this, blend the shadow so it starts to get lighter naturally. There's a little bit too much of a separation, so if you blend it really lightly, it should kind of gradually get lighter. Now over here, I'm going to do the same thing. If your paint is dry, then you just go back and you add that clay color with a little bit of the purple, and you can do it. Okay, so now we're going to start working on the railing. Just before that though, I just want to add a little bit more light tan color, so I'm adding a bit more white here. Okay, then I'm going to go with purple and green, and I'm going to add a little dab there for the top of the post. I'm going to bring it down right like that. I'm going to go up and over. And same with here, but we're going to bring it up a little higher, remember? Up, 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 over. And take that clay color again. Bring it over the top. And then we can start adding our posts for the rest of the railing. Again, purple and light olive green. We're going to have some on the other side, so we're going to see a little bit this post, there's another one over on the other side. So that will just bring straight down there, very close to this one for the perspective. And I cut through this again, add a little dab for the top of it. Okay, and then we're going to leave a space. One, and then another one that comes right down here in front. So this one's behind, and this is in front. One behind, one in front. We've got a little white railing or another board that goes across. Then we'll come back in over top for the ones that are closest to us on this side. So you're going to skip the ones that are on the other side. I'm going to take some white and I'm going to go right over Okay, I'm going to do the same thing over here again. Little one that comes in front, little one in the back, in the front, and that's going to be covered up. White again. Then in front, take some white, go over on the very top of the railing. We'll take a little bit more purple, light olive green with a clean brush. I'm going to go just underneath. See, that will make the white stand out more. If your highlights aren't showing up, it's not always because you're not adding enough. It might be that you just need a little bit more contrast and shadows. So that's all I'm doing here, is just coming in and adding a little bit more contrast, making my dark areas stand out more. By doing this, then the board, that lighter colored board, stands out more. I'm going to add a little bit more green in here, both greens, and I'm just going to wiggle like this, pull a little bit down in here. Add a little bit of purple in there. Clean these edges up with that purple again. Well, that comes into a point. Go back to my clay color, get a little bit on the tip of my brush. Bring that down. Now we can start working on our tree. So for our tree, I'm going to use my round brush right here, and I'm going to start by taking some of this beautiful thick neon rose. And then I'm going to take, I know it's really thick. I love when it gets really thick like this. I think out of all my heavy bodied paints, it's the neons that tend to dry the quickest. I'm not really sure why that is, but I'm going to start up here. We've got this is a little Japanese maple. And we're just going to start by, I'm going to go into that neon pink too. I'll pick up a little bit more of my neon red. Okay, so I've got a little bit more neon red here. I'm just going to tap, 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 leaving little dabs. I'm not using a mop brush. Normally I like to use mop brushes for my trees, but there's so many little spaces in between. This is a bit different, so I have more control. I don't want to lose all of that background. So we'll go ahead and just add these little taps and dabs for our leaves. And look at how pretty this looks against all of that green and purple. So I'm pushing a little harder where we've got some thicker areas, a little bit more dense in leaves. A little bit more clumped together. So it's nice to have the neon rose in combination with the pink and the red, because it's not just all one color, the leaves. The light's hitting them. They're a little shiny, and I've got a few down here too. Yeah, so it's not always just, when you first look at a photo, kind of just see things a little bit more simpler than what they really are. When you look closely, you see that, oh, okay, it's not just red. At first glance, if I was to ask you, looking at the reference photo, what color is this tree, you would all say red. And me, at first glance, I would say red too. But as you start painting from reference photos, it really teaches you, actually. It trains your eye, and you just really start to appreciate nature and just everything more and more, because you notice all the subtle little beautiful things that you didn't before. I'm going to add a little bit of white to these colors, and I'll tell you why. Not to make a pastel color, but once this dries, because I'm adding it over dark colors, this dark base, neon colors are transparent, so you can already see that it's fading only because I've painted it on over something dark. It's going to stay bright over the brightest area of my canvas. So if you want a little hint on how to keep your neons bright after they dry, is just add a little bit of white to them. And if it dries looking too pastel and you lose that kind of punch of color, go back over once it's dry and dab just straight neon over the pastel shade of it. And that's the tip for keeping them nice and bright. Now, you don't have to have neon paints to paint this. There's lots of bright variations of red and pink. Like you can use scarlet red, crimson red, both of those, vermilion red, magenta, all of those. Let's see, it really, when you add it thick like this, and you leave a little texture, and that's going to make it look even more 3D. When it's dry, you'll be left with a little texture too. We're going to add some branches now with our liner or rigger brush. And I'm going to take green, purple, a little bit of white, roll it around on my brush. There's a bigger one that comes right from here. Go back and add a little highlight on it. I need a little bit more white to make these show up. Thin your paint out where you want to have more delicate looking branches. Add a little shadow, just cut that off a little bit with some green and purple. We'll just add a few more here, and then I'll come in with a few more leaves. I'm going to finish this painting off by just going over the bottom of these reflections in the water. Then I'll take a little bit of purple in this space and add a little wiggle. Okay, this painting is all done. This was a lot of fun. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I was happy to be able to render this photo for you guys. I'm just adding a little into this little branch here and a few more flowers, but yeah, this was such a joy to paint. I loved being there, and I recommend you guys Google it. Go check it out if you're ever visiting Canada. And have fun painting along with me today. Don't forget to subscribe for more and for exclusive content, longer videos, no commercials, and so much more. Please check out my Patreon link below where you can join and become a member and help support what I do for as little as $5 a month. So thanks everyone very much, and I'll see you soon in my next video. Bye.